Hey Brick Maniacs, welcome back to the BKM library. We've got another minifigure of the month for you, so that means we're going to sit down and go over this. So this is kind of cool. We have kind of a correlation between these past 2 months.
A little bit, you could say that. Yeah, a bit of a correlation.
Coming from the same battle, so yeah.
Yeah, so again, we're following just World War II as it goes through, and so this would be from the Battle of the Bulge conflict here. And so both these minifigures are taken from that. So last month we had the German Rifleman, and now this month we have the U.S. Rifleman, shown here with a kick-ass Brick Arms Garand M1 rifle here, which you can get as a great addition for this. Down the road, I'll be coming out with a perfect caliber of that as well, so just stay tuned for that. But again, yeah, so this is the German Rifleman and the U.S. Rifleman. There's a full review video for this German guy here as well. But again, really awesome combo for these two guys. So I'll set this guy off to the side. The U.S. Rifleman, let me get the head straight on there. Where should I start?
Well, so I noticed that there's a crazy amount of color shifting going on the legs for sure. So why don't we work from the bottom up and talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so from the bottom, they start off with a kind of a really unique piece of gear for this time period. So it is a pre-war overboot, galoshes, I think they might have called them. Yeah, pre-war overboot that it's sort of a rubberized, it's like a rubber with like a canvas covering. I actually picked up a pair. They make reproduction versions for like dirt cheap, and they're kind of cool. They have these metal clasps on the front. They were kind of cumbersome. The idea was to go over their existing service boot. Whether or not how well it worked, but anyways, they had to bring it back into use because there was a sort of shortage of adequate winter supplies.
Sure. Okay.
So it's but it was quickly replaced with the shoe pack boot. So this was kind of a limited use here. So I decided to go with that boot because it was kind of I thought it was unique. A little bit of snow. It's maybe lightly snowing at the time. We'll say. Going up, that's when you kind of start to get into the color shifting on that coat. So the legs are actually a Lego dark tan, and the torso is actually a reddish brown torso. In real life, this great coat that this guy's wearing is a little bit darker than Lego dark tan, maybe a bit redder, a bit brown on the browner side. So I chose to do the color shifting to try and match that Lego reddish brown on the legs. But then on the torso, I wanted to lighten that up a little bit. So you can kind of see here on this this M1 rifle here that like this is Lego reddish brown, but you can see that this minifigure has been shifted a little bit to change up that color slightly. So
what kind of, I mean,
this is a big wool greatcoat.
Right. So dark tan legs, reddish brown torso, matching the colors. What kind of process was that?
I mean, it actually went pretty quick. I was working with the guys in the print shop, and we kind of just went back and forth, dialing in the colors. I've been playing around a lot with color mixing on these minifigures to try to create stuff that one is not only as accurate as we can get it with the Lego color palette, but also easy to make because we're printing out pretty big batches of these, so it can't be too complex of colors, and we don't want to go super thick on the ink either, so I'm trying to use as little amount of ink as possible because it creates a lot better of a texture on that minifigure if you don't go crazy overboard. So I actually am color mixing with the Lego dark tan underneath of it a little bit too. So that's not just I'm not just blasting that with brown ink on there. So
right.
It's kind of cool. Again, a little bit more of that simulated wool texture on that greatcoat on both the torso and on the legs. So the greatcoat, similar story compared to the overboots. This greatcoat was designed more for formal wear or for just not really on the battlefield, but due to shortage of winter supplies, they had to bring it out for the soldiers. Kind of a slick-looking uniform actually in combat. Them wearing this big greatcoat, and I just thought it looked cool.
So is this something that in the past, if you wanted to replicate this, you would have had to use one of those fabric accessories?
Yeah, you'd have to use either like a fabric coat or. I've seen Lego do sort of, I guess, trench coats or greatcoats in the past. Maybe some of the inspiration for this would have been some of the Lord of the Rings minifigures.
Oh, very cool.
So there's a really cool selection, especially like when they first started doing Lord of the Rings. Some cool figures. That's sort of what inspired me way back then. The cloth greatcoats would have been your best option, which they look cool on their own.
But they cover up a lot of the detail of the figure, and you can't put webbing obviously over them unless you're going to try to jam a Brick Arms vest.
Yeah, and you can, but it flexes the Brick Arms.
Right.
This is
And then they're bulky. Like they just all of a sudden they're huge.
Yeah, I think this is the best way to kind of keep it in that Lego minifigure form. I mean, it is a minifigure. It is a you know, it's got very distinct shape to it, giant trapezoid, you know. So it's keeping it in that minifigure style without having to use all that much additional, you know, fabric stuff. So,
sure.
Yeah. Standard web gear here. This is just the M1 Garand rifle pouches. I actually have a new olive color on there. The more I've been kind of researching just U.S. equipment in general, it's way more green than what I think a lot of movies and just our perception of it actually would be. So we're used to seeing like, this is like we're decades later, all this gear is faded out by now. So all the original military surplus that we would see from World War I is really faded out. So that green is one of the first colors to kind of get bleached from the sun.
So when they were wearing it back during the war, it would have been more vibrant.
Pretty dang green actually. There actually, as far as I can tell, there were only like 2 pieces of equipment that the U.S. military issued that were in a khaki color, so like a light tan color, and it was like summer equipment. So everything was technically a tinge of green to it. Even like the tanker jackets, where if you look at the movie Fury,
it's tan.
It's totally tan, but in real life it was probably considerably more green, unless it had been out in the sun continually. So, you know, maybe there'd be variants of that closer to tan. But so it is interesting. I'm shifting it a bit more green than I think we've done in the past. But again, that inconsistency between gear is pretty accurate actually. So our color matching is far more consistent than in real life ever would have been, you know.
Right, sure.
You know, it's when they're running a piece of fabric, apparently there are like 3 different tones that they split the spools into.
Interesting.
Just from beginning to end of dyeing process. So you'll see the color all over the place. Anyways, that's just kind of a side tangent.
Small minifigure, tons of research. Look at what's packed into that.
On the cool little note here on the suspenders of the web gear, you have an ammunition clip. Like kind of sandwiched on there, which you'd see that occasionally. So I thought that was a cool detail that I added. A little bit more snow texture here and there on the side. Of course, those ammunition pouches wrap all the way around from the front to the side. And I think we were the first to do that, so that's cool. That went over pretty well. I think people like that. It utilizes all the different surfaces instead of trying to cram all the pouches on the front of the torso. I'm trying to use this thing as a complete 3D model, you know. This is a minifigure in real space.
Right.
Moving on to the back, pretty simple loadout. Canteen, you have your entrenching tool, and some more snow texture up top. The face is cool. That is, so it's cold, obviously. And so I wanted to sort of simulate that this guy he's cold, right?
Right.
So he's got his rosy cheeks going on there, but I didn't really like the ones that, like Lego, you'll see them, like they'll have
literally just like,
it's just like red, like gingerbread man, or not, it's like Nutcracker man.
Yeah,
like,
right.
And I thought that just kind of looked really cheesy, actually.
Looks like you put blush on.
Right. So I played around for a little while and got a nice gradient that simulates a little bit of that blushed texture to it. So he's cold, he's angry. Yeah. Moving up, you have the helmet. Probably not quite as common of a configuration with this helmet. You know, they have superior numbers, you know, at the time, and it wasn't as common to see the U.S. troops with a white helmet cover. But occasionally, maybe when they're on patrol or something, they would. There's a few photographs out there of them.
Sure.
This would have just been probably like a bed sheet or something, cut up into pieces and you know, tucked in underneath the helmet liner. So it's sort of like in the field applied camouflage. But usually it was probably just the netting or just the plain helmet would be the most common configuration out there. But I thought this was a good opportunity to bust out the sort of a white covering to that helmet.
Well, just from a visual standpoint,
Yeah.
it looks really sharp.
It does look sharp.
For those who don't know, do you want to go over the double straps?
Yeah, so one of them is, the front one is, the leather strap is to hold the helmet liner in place, so it's a 2-part helmet. There's kind of like I think it's fiberglass liner that, and then over top of that you have that steel pot.
Right.
They're kind of sandwiched together, held in place by that front leather belt. On the back, that would be their chin strap that you'd often just see them, just clip it into place in the back of their helmet to keep it out of their way, so they don't have to continually unbuckle and buckle it up.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's again in that olive drab color, which that's especially tough to color match on a helmet, a curved surface like that, because as the Lego curves and contours, you actually have to come up with different color mixes because the ink will shift just based on how far away it is from the printer head. So there's a few different colors actually in that to try and keep
just to get it consistent.
Consistent enough,
Wow.
Yeah. There's so many little things that go into making these minifigures. The arms, you have some subtle texture of that wool, that simulated wool texture. And yeah, that's the figure, man. That's
very cool. What an in-depth review of the minifigure of the month.
There's a lot that goes into it.
No, it really is, and I think that's kind of, when you have something this small, you can sit and stare and look at it, but you don't really know everything that you're always looking at, and so that's why we do these, is so you can kind of see some of the behind-the-scenes research, and then when the research transitions into the actual printing techniques and whatnot, I mean, it's very impressive, and both of these are super epic minifigures.
Yes, they would go really well together, cool side by side in your display or in your diorama. Pick up one of each or 20 of each, that'd be cool as well.
Yeah, I hope we get to see some cool mocks with these two pitted against each other, because that was it definitely gives it a cool look. I kind of like just the kind of yin and yang look of it in general, you know what I mean? The light helmet, light uniform, darker helmet, darker uniform, it just,
Interesting.
Opposites attack.
I guess something like that.
Something like that, whatever they say. So, well, thank you, Landon. This is very, very cool. Once again, this will be available. This is the minifigure of the month to kick off the new decade for all of January. So make sure to scoop that up while supplies left. For right now, you can pick up an overmolded Garand. Otherwise, we are hoping to have this in perfect caliber very, very soon. So keep an eye out for that. But you can always pick up the figures beforehand and then scoop up the weapons later. So that might be the way to go for this. But as I said, thank you very much for joining me. And thank you guys for watching.